Hey, before I kick off the podcast, I just want to shout out Next Door Clothing. Next Door, a clothing brand based out of Bondi in Sydney. They're making really nice jeans and shirts and hats. So go and check out their full range at nextdoorsydney.com. They're also artists, so you can go and check out a range of art. They put on rad parties, and I love what they're doing. So nextdoorsydney.com for the full range.
All right, let's get rolling, man. This is for Clementine and Otis. So, as always, just a big shout out to our sponsors, Indosol and Tectonic Coffee. Indosol, man, those guys are, they're repurposing motor vehicle tires. They're stopping tires from going into landfill, and they're putting them on your feet, and I just love that. If you go to their website and use the code THT, you'll get a discount. And, you'll be making a conscious consumer decision, and that's more important. Have a think about that when every time you buy something. Tectonic Coffee, the same sort of deal, It's organic, it's ethically produced, ethically harvested. Owners Deaton and Chelsea, they're following those coffee beans on their whole journey from farm and into your coffee cup. If you go to tectoniccoffee.com, they're based in LA, and if you use code THT, you'll get a discount there as well. All right. I'm so stoked for this guest today. So here we go.
I'm having a good time.
You are?
Yeah.
I can tell.
And we are rolling.
Terrible happy talks. Terrible happy talks. Terrible happy talks. Terrible happy talks.
We got this, mate. We've got this.
This is from now on free-flowing and clean as. Here we go.
Dude, I feel it. I feel it.
All right.
Today's guest is Jake Mackenzie. Jake is a husband, father, surfer, waterman, entrepreneur, and when the Bombie Uluwatu is breaking, he's often the guy paddling into the best waves of the day. Like many of us, Jake wears numerous hats in his life. However, I personally see a clean living family man and a passionate surfer who possesses a keen sense of spirituality. Over the years, I've found myself magnetically drawn into his anti-surf surf shop, Drifter, at Bingin Uluwatu. It's just a space that has an immediate warmth coupled with inspiration found in the boutique range of surfboards, artwork, and the various books that it has in stock. I actually bought my daughter's favorite kids book from a surf shop. Would you believe it? Fresh from a surf trip to Sumba today, Jake is with me from his home in Uluwatu, Bali, to share his journey, experiences, challenges, and hopes for the future. Jake Mackenzie, welcome.
Thank you.
Dude,
thank you for that.
We did it.
We're on. We're live.
Did it.
I can hear you. You can hear me. We can hear each other. Beautiful.
Oh, man. I never wanted to really do remote podcasts, but they are necessary in these times because it means I get to talk to legends like you. So thanks for bearing with the tech issues that we had, bro.
No worries, bro. I mean, we have definitely up at Ulu's, there's some issues anyway with connecting to these networks. So I wouldn't put it all on you, bro. It's mostly up here, which has good and bad, aspects to it.
Man, they're good problems. I want to be disconnected from the internet, to be honest.
Right? In this day and age, it's an interesting one. It's an interesting one with the advent of, the next generation with the kids and how deep they are. It's like it's just a part of the fabric of life, isn't it? Nothing to be afraid of. Technology is not I mean, with kids, you're the same. You understand. With kids, it's like that word moderation, whatever that means. But, having some semblance of balance around it. But it's part of life. It's part of everything. Like my kids were homeschooling these last few months because of COVID. And, they were spending a lot of hours on the devices a day. And I actually, Vanessa and myself came to the conclusion it was too much, in fact. Too many hours for staring at those screens. So we've got them doing other things, which is key.
I agree, man. That was one of my questions. Like, how do you tend to manage, technology with your children? I know I struggle with it already. I know my children get so fixated on these screens and you can just see their faces glaze over and it's like this crazy, almost immediate addiction to them.
Straight up dopamine, hey? They've proven it. It's like the likes and the interaction on a lot of social media platform equates exactly. It's dopamine. So it is addictive. It's clear.
Someone was telling me that like it's the similar formula to what they use for poker machines in casinos.
Yep, believe it. Totally believe it. It's the next hit, right?
It's the next hit. So give me a rundown about your recent trip to Sumba, man. How was it?
Yeah, totally. It was amazing, man. I go to this beautiful place that some friends of ours have created out of, pretty much their dreams and their visions. Is called Ngalongkala. So it's near kind of Nihiwatu. Everyone's familiar with Nihiwatu.
I've heard of Nihiwatu.
Yeah, near Nihiwatu. It's called Ngalongkala. Christian and Kaale C, and their three beautiful daughters, Deha, Kamali'i, and Lele. And so Christian and Kaale are kind of visionaries in a way. They've created this incredible kind of Garden of Eden. They've got self-sufficient with the food. They're growing amazing foods, and they've got a orchard, a food forest. So it's a permaculture setup. They've got amazing waves right out the front, oceans alive, catching fish and whatnot. And they're just good family people, and I love going there. So this time I took the twins. I have twin girls who are 12, Hanale and Ziggy, and we jumped on a plane. We headed out to Sumba, and going back to what we were just talking about, no phones, no devices. So we did like 2 weeks, device-free, in nature, surfing, reading, meditating, lots of ocean time, lots of good family time. It was pretty key. It was really nice. And I would recommend that to everyone. I think that unplugging is a really healthy, important thing to do. I certainly benefit from it.
I've sort of been observing, I guess, your journey from afar for some time, and I admire your setup with your family, raising children in Bali, even as a starting point. I was doing the same thing for a couple of years there. Was this something you and your wife really set out to do originally, like create like an ocean lifestyle for your children?
Yeah, that's a good question, isn't it? I suppose the reality for us is that we have a really blessed lifestyle, in the sense that, Bali is a little bit more, I would say, relaxed than a lot of Western countries and cultures. And we're able to spend more time doing what we enjoy doing, which is being creative and actually making a living from it. And then in a sense, passing that passion and creativity onto others so they can share it with us. And so having kids was just natural for us to want to share that journey with them, and the ocean time is such a clutch part of that. It's kind of the central focus of who we are and what we do, Mm-hmm. We also love the mountains too, so I suppose mountain time, ocean time, family time, all precious, isn't it? We're fortunate. We work for ourselves, so we can give more time when needed to really nurture the kids and give them our time, which I think is so key when they're younger. Does that answer your question? Somewhat.
It's a great answer. It's a great answer. And I wonder, how do you feel your family would adapt to reintegrating into, say, back into like a Western culture? Is it a tough one?
Yeah, don't know. We've got lots of friends up the north coast of New South Wales, up kind of around the Broken Head, Byron area. We're pretty tight with a couple of families up. And we love it up there, and we love our friends. We love the community, and that's it. That community with other kids and families, and based around the ocean. Once again, it's kind of like the ocean worship, right? The Church of the Open Sky, as Nathan Oldfield puts it, and probably Nat Young as well said it. But yeah, I don't know. We're not there. We're quite happy here right now. We're pretty content. The kids are really well balanced, I would say. They're really well socialized, and they've had the good fortune of being around a lot of different nationalities, which I think gives them a nice broader perspective of the human race, right, and other cultures. They're learning Indonesian, and they're, immersed to some degree in this culture, although they're surrounded by a lot of kind of Western kids. But to answer that question about, reintegrating into an Australian kind of setup, I don't know. I don't see it as an issue. I think they're Australian. They're born in Australia, so they're always able to go back and, live and work and do the rest of it. But at the end of the day, we'll see. That's the future, right? Just for today, all is good. Everyone's healthy.
It's great. And I noticed your son, is it Ziggy?
Flynn. Flynn.
Yeah. So Flynn, he's right into his surfing now, starting to charge, eh?
He's having a good time. He's got a nice smooth style,
Does that mean a lot to you?
Yeah, definitely. It lights me up. Nothing better than watching your kids getting barreled, hey?
I can imagine. I mean, it's my dream. I want to see my son get barreled. It's like I've got this whole new purpose in life. It's like get my son barreled ASAP. But I guess where I struggle as a father is trying to push my interests onto my children. So, my daughter won't go near the ocean. Yeah. She's just not into it at all. And I respect that, So I've had to sort of pull back in that respect in terms of pushing him.
I had a strategy from the beginning with Flynn. I decided not to push him at all, just to let him evolve and move as he wanted to. And if he saw me surfing, that might kind of pique his curiosity, which it did. But I was never one of those soccer dads or soccer mums, whatever, whatever, cricket, whatever. And so my strategy early on was to just keep it casual. And he hooked into it. And then, I pushed him into waves when he was probably 3 or 4, but, just down the beach break, fun, not trying to get him up at 5 a.m. and crack, dawn patrol and get all heavy on him because he didn't finish his turn properly. Nah, not at all. Flinny's way more, I would say, he's much more he's way into more stylish surfing. He really enjoys that soul aspect of it. And he's never really been a super competitive young dude. So.
Wow. But that must feel like a product of the environment you've raised him in. Come on. I mean, I feel like your whole vibe is just oozing that. I mean, even from the boards that you choose to stock and some of the company that you've kept over the years, I think they're pretty good influences to have on a young man,
For sure. And that's it. I mean, one thing is that being a good parent and having boundaries and also being, friendly, but also at the same time knowing you're a parent and obviously being able to discipline and point out, create more of a moral compass in the kids. And then the other side of that is you have uncles around who are super cool and kind of can be a little bit more cheeky and playful. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And Flinny's had the good fortune of having a lot of really positive role models in his life and surfing role models as well,
But that's also a reflection of you too, someone who's drawn those type of people into your life, I mean, I personally work on I just have to live my best life and hopefully be that good example. It's cliche as it sounds, but it's tricky.
Yep.
So you went to Sumba recently. I got to talk surfing. So did you get some swell?
Man, we scored. It was macking.
Nice. So is meditation a big part of your daily routine?
Yes, I really appreciate morning time. I like to get up at 5 and I like to spend the first half an hour or so at least just getting quiet and putting a perspective and focus on the day and being in the present and then, getting still. I appreciate that. That's a really important time of day for me. And if I can meditate twice in the day, I will. But the mornings I find
really
super calm and yeah.
I mean, is this something you've put into practice for many years?
Look, I had a bit of a little bit of a jolt last year. I went to jolt in a good way. I went to India and spent time in this really beautiful place in southern India called Arunachala, which is a sacred mountain, Shiva mountain. And I went specifically for this one teacher. His name's Bhagwan Ramana Maharishi. And his teaching is very pure and very old and very simple and very beautiful. And it's just a self-inquiry type of meditation. So you're basically asking yourself in an inquiry modality in meditation, who am I? In essence, getting in touch with your being. And so I went to this ashram and I spent about 2 weeks there with another friend. And I had a really powerful experience. And I haven't really stopped meditating since I got back from there. And it was a really hard to describe in words, but it's just like a really important practice in my life for just getting quiet and centering and really putting a focus on what's real in life and what's not, and how intrinsically I am happy and perfect. And the ego and the mind gets in the way oftentimes in the moments, in those situations that occur. And, I need to, and meditation helps me to get back into that calm centered place, But I've been working kind of being on a spiritual path now for a few years. That's one of the steps, right? One of the steps of the program that I'm in and I'm actively participating in, of prayer and meditation. The 11th step. So through prayer and meditation, improve our conscious contact with God as we understood him, her, it, whatever you want to, Yoda is your higher power, or the light bulb, you know what I mean? But for me, I find it concurrently with meditation, prayer sits hand in hand. It's like, in a sense, I was told prayer is your conversation with the spirit and meditation is spirit's conversation with you. And I like that. It's kind of simple.
Yeah, and just for those that don't know, I guess we're talking about a 12-step recovery program, which I think is just a beautiful program that is such a good guide for people to be led to discover their own sense of spirituality. And I kind of feel that anyone could benefit from it. I mean, if they're feeling like their life is unmanageable, whether it's because of substances, whether it's because of relationships or shopping or technology, I think it's just beautiful like that. So thanks for being so open about it.
Yeah.
If you don't mind me asking though, has that been something you've implemented in your life for many, many years or?
Yeah, I've been doing it for a few decades now. I mean,
a few decades. Wow.
A few decades, yeah. It'll be 25 years this month, actually, Shannon.
Wow, bro! Congrats.
Well, you know how it is, man. It's like I wasn't exactly kicking goals when I first came in. I was like,
well, that was my question. Do you mind if we go down that rabbit hole a little bit and you tell us what got you to that point?
Not at all. Yeah, that's kind of intrinsic to how this whole thing works. It's like the idea that spirituality is a path. And, I understand it as being like, I kind of went to a really dark place in myself and in many ways in the surroundings I was in, but more importantly in myself. I was really lonely and really like afraid and really messed up and really, really confused. And drugs and alcohol were my companion. And then it stopped working, or they stopped working, to the point where I was getting no relief. And I found myself stuck with myself, in a real dark place. And so that preceded an awakening of sorts for me, surrendering to that and having a spiritual awakening and putting down the substances, one day at a time. And initially I was, going back to physical proximities. I mean, it was a pretty wild story. I was in Prague, in Europe of all places, in the middle of winter, and 6 months before that, I was living in Hawaii, and I was living in this beautiful house with a bunch of clean and sober people, and living the life, surfing, going to meetings, recovery meetings, AA meetings, and I thought I had my shit together, and that's kind of one of the chinks in our defense, And at the same time, I had reservations. I still thought, well, I could manage it and I'll just have one spliff, or I just have one drink, or just have one hit, you know what I mean? And not understanding the nature of the illness. And so fast forward 6 months and I'm in this squat in the center of Prague. We're actually on the outskirts of Prague, but kind of real dark with a bunch of real shady characters, including myself. And doing everything.
I can't imagine it.
Yeah, man. Honestly, it's like I look back now, it's like another body in another lifetime, and just doing everything, consuming and being a pure glutton, and just, in a dark place. I don't need to go into details, but, I think people who get to that place of like hitting the bottom, having an awakening of sorts and surrendering to a higher power, it came pretty quickly for me. In the sense I gave up, I surrendered. And from that day forwards, I was very fortunate that I haven't really had to use alcohol or drugs as a way to find a solution to my problems, I was given a set of tools. I was given a blueprint for living. And I've done a few simple things like, go to meetings, sit down, shut up, take the cotton wool out of my ears and stick it in my mouth. These are all things that I heard. Get in service, listen to someone who knew more than me, stick my hand out, help other people, and so on and so forth. That's how the program works. It's a real simple program for complicated people.
Yeah, I love that. If we fast forward 20 years or 25 years, what's it like now?
Yep.
Is life easier, or do you still struggle with life's challenges?
Easy is an interesting word. I would say it's more flowing. I think that's probably a word I would use. I mean, you and I both know problems come up in life, like, when you're talking about, it's not just about yourself, when it's about your kids or about your spouse or about your business. It's like, I've stuck around long enough to get a life worth living. I like to say that because it's like it takes time. Time takes time, to start making decisions that point you in the right direction, starting to surround yourself with people who lift you up, starting to change your behavior, starting to change your thinking. And I think, and I don't think I know where I sit today is I'm in a much better place on the inside. I feel more at peace with myself, and I'm able to handle situations on the outside better. That doesn't necessarily mean I always ace things, and I still have problems in relationships, and we have run-ins with people. It's just life. I'm far from perfect. I'd be lying if it was any bit different. And that's the same in my relationship with Vanessa. We have moments, but I don't hold on to stuff, and I don't beat myself up in the same way. And I have solutions. I have lots of solutions to deal with my so-called problems.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
I know exactly what you mean, because I guess while we're talking about it, for me, myself, I think I'm 8 years into a similar journey to you. And
perfect, bro.
Sometimes life is just brutally raw and there's no anesthetic. I have those moments. And then I also question my behavior and actions and think, have I really changed? Am I still the same guy, except minus, the use of these substances that were numbing me out? But then I have these moments of like if you strip it right back, like I am, because I'm much more predictable. I don't have hangovers anymore. I can't remember the last time I vomited. Even as simple as that. I show up for my kids, and and what I'm learning personally is that those behavioral changes, it's just practice and time, and it's a lot of time. It's not an overnight. It's never going to be an overnight fix. And I think for me, the biggest realization I had was, well, this is my new lifestyle. This is the style of my life now forever. This is how I will be, I have to have these things in play. And then I guess surfing is a very obvious one, but I actually question whether or not that's been good for me sometimes. Do you ever question it?
Yeah, I think that part of the sickness or the illness of alcoholism and drug addiction is centered around self-centeredness and selfishness. And the ism is I, self, and me. And I think surfing in some ways is quite a selfish endeavor. And I think it's a very healthy alternative to a lot of other alternatives that we use to make ourselves feel better. And I think the attitude by which we surf, you know what I mean? It's like Albie Falzon says, you've really reached that point of enlightenment's maybe a big word to throw around, but let's just say enlightenment. You really reach that point of enlightenment when you're giving the best sets away to your friends, We don't have that need to, but that's obviously a pretty high bar to go to, but it's a good one to strive for. But going back a little bit, so I find that healthy living and a healthy attitude I benefit greatly from water time. I benefit greatly from taking that time and immersing myself in nature and immersing myself. It's a meditation. And then also having those lessons the ocean gives, and the lessons that the tribe in the ocean gives, and the lessons that I learn with my kids in the ocean, and not just in the ocean, around the ocean. And like we're talking about, creating a lifestyle, a life worth living and a lifestyle that you love. And if it's around the ocean, it's around the ocean. In this case, for me, it's a very integral part. And I find that I going back to what you're saying, sometimes I can overdo it. I have that tendency and the propensity to want more. It's the same thing. More barrels, more big waves, more adrenaline, more dopamine, man. But
And when's enough? That's
maybe never. Maybe it's just for the day, just for today, right? I mean, I actually find my biggest challenges today is like sometimes I'll get in the water and, my head's not right. And I'll start just judging everyone in the water. And then I'll start like having conversations in my head. And then maybe I'll even act out with someone, someone who I haven't seen in my local. And at the end of the day, I've come to the conclusion time and time again, that is not the ideal that I want to shoot for.
wow.
And I want to really enjoy surfing. And when I get into that headspace, I'm not enjoying it. And I'm not adding to the flow of life. So it's a real good reminder to be in that space and also be aware of it, have the consciousness around it to be able to shift it and change it, which is, once again, easier said than done. But I have been practicing that. I've been practicing that because I do suffer from that at times.
It's funny you brought that up because that became a really predominant thing for me in my early sobriety. I started becoming a really angry man in the surf, which was really weird. And I got to the point where, surfing became I had this negative association with surf. Like every time I was going out for a surf, I was going into battle. I was battling the crowd. I was battling the Mother Nature. I was just fighting everything. To the point where it sort of culminated in a series of verbal altercations with other people in the surf, which is always like the most unsavory thing because it feels like such a contradiction of, what you're even trying to do. So I created a rule for myself, like the second those feelings were coming upon me, I'll just paddle in. So I sort of have even been known to paddle out in the surf for 5-10 minutes and then just paddle straight back in because I was starting to get that negative association and confrontational and it's not what it's about. But I just want to ask you one more question around that is you said that, the ocean teaches you a lot of lessons. Can you give us some like specific examples of what those lessons are, especially for people who don't really surf as much?
Yeah. Well, I'll just, I suppose, go straight to like, let's just say big wave surfing, and being in that environment where the power and the rawness of the ocean is real apparent. And you, in a sense, are doing something dangerous. I take, in a sense, my life into my hands and I put myself into a situation that potentially could be, fatal. But that's not how I view it. I look at it in a sense where I'm definitely tuning into how I'm feeling, tuning into my body, how fit I am, how present I am, tuning into my mind, how grounded and balanced I am. And I'm tuning into my equipment. How is my equipment? Am I in the right place with it? Do I have if it's big, I'll have an impact vest on or the right board or the right leash. So I'm really doing a scan. I'm like doing a scan of my environment, mentally, physically. And then I also like to take into consideration that sixth sense, that kind of like intuitive sense, and make sure that I'm, it feels right. Then being out in the ocean. So I think that's a lesson in life too. It's like any situation, we can scan ourselves and really just tune into how we're feeling and tune into our, our emotions and, really where we're sitting with it, and then tune into our bodies. And then, it's a life thing. But then in the ocean, when you're in a situation which can be quite threatening or quite, in a big wipeout on a big wave, the normal reaction in life is, fight or flight, right? But in those situations, you really have to just really relax and just, once again, instantaneous decision making, be really present, make sure that you're utilizing your breath as well as possible, make sure, your environment you're familiar with. And if you're set up properly, you got somebody in the water who's watching you, maybe even have a ski or a boat, you know what I mean? So it's really a case of like, I suppose it comes back to being present and being present in yourself, which is meditation as well. And I freedive a fair bit and spearfish. And it's the same thing for me. When I'm underwater spearfishing or freediving, I find it most beneficial to be really in my present self, in my being, right there, right here, right now, not off thinking about whether I locked my keys in the car or, did I buy the right shop? You know what I mean? So as an example for you right there, it'd be a case of like all of that I just said, and then being relaxed and then being really calm and not letting the brain, go, take off and get negative, but stay positive and stay also relaxed and calm. That's a good lesson. And that's just one of many.
So is that how you're managing fear? So let's say you're paddling out to Bingin Uluwatu, did all those things you just explained, are they contributing to your management of fear?
Yeah, I think balancing it. I think there's a healthy dose of fear is helpful for us to be able to analyze our situation and make quick decisions, right? It keeps us really present, I would say. Managing fear is probably the right way to put it, you just said. I mean, I think it's a case of like crossing out a lot of variables before you get to that place that are in your control. And then having a real good grasp of the situation you're in and being able to manage all those elements as best as you can. And then there's always that shit that just happens that you have no control over. But I think you can level the playing field in the sense of being in the position where you have prepared properly. And fear is always going to be there. And I think in the case, fear is not necessarily a bad thing. I think it's the adrenaline that kicks in to give us that extra bit of oomph, and that's almost what I enjoy.
I know you're into spearfishing, like you said, and also I've noticed that you are involved in is it a breath apnea course, like a breath holding course?
Yep. We help facilitate.
Can you just so what's that about, the breath apnea?
It's a training that we're doing with a friend of ours, Augusto, and he's a proficient surfer and a proficient, I should say, a very proficient surfer and a very proficient freediver and spearfisherman. And it's a big wave freediving course that teaches you the basics of the physiology of the body, understanding your body, also understanding some training techniques that you can do to increase your breath hold and improve lung capacity, and also understand what's known as a mammalian dive reflex, which is a reflex that we have as human mammals that is natural. And it occurs when a series of events happen, particularly when the body is under pressure underwater. All kinds of different interesting things start happening. And that's a whole subject unto itself. There's some great literature out there. Right? Pretty cool thing, the mammalian dive reflex, actually. The idea is, once again, as you're saying, it's a case of managing fear. So it's a case of knowing your body, understanding the natural reactions. And in this case, it's a reflex. So it's a natural reflex as a human, as a mammal.
Is that where you're holding your breath and you sort of convulse, like a convulsive sort of swallow or gulp? Or I don't know how to describe it.
Well, you have...
Almost like a convulsion?
Well, you have thoracic convulsions when your body is underwater. It doesn't have to be under pressure, but when your body's telling you to breathe, you start to get these thoracic convulsions. And those thoracic convulsions don't necessarily mean you have to breathe. They're just your body saying you need to breathe. And you can actually ride those contractions and go beyond them and stay submerged or underwater for a longer period of time. That's part of the mammalian dive reflex, and also the body stops pumping so much blood to extremities that it focuses on kind of the brains, the lungs, and the heart to some degree. And so your blood starts moving away from your arms and your legs and focusing on that. And then initially your heartbeat speeds up. And then your body realizes, oh shit, we've got to conserve. It slows everything down. So you go into this kind of like altered sense. And that's when the mammalian dive reflex kicks in. So in essence, your heartbeat's dropped, your blood stopped pumping the extremities, you rode these contractions. And in some cases, you get these spleen squeezes, where the spleen is squeezed, which actually what happens is it pumps more oxygen-rich red blood cells into your body. So it's a very interesting. I mean, I'm not going to go on because I'm not an expert in the field, but I understand the basics of it. It's amazing, and the body's amazing, right? Basically, the long sort of it is you can stay underwater a lot longer than you think. but you need to also understand what your limits are as well. And dive with other people is another good bit of advice, which I don't often do.
Dude, it's so interesting.
Advice, right?
I love all that stuff.
You should dive with someone else. You know, you should watch each other and be safe. And then which I don't always do. So I should take my own advice.
But I'm in awe of some freedivers. Like a lot of my friends are right into spearfishing, and I just find it such a brave thing to do. Like I've done it and I get so scared, especially actually when I catch a fish and I'm bringing it in. I'm scared it's going to attract, I won't say the word, but bigger fish. Is that in the back of your mind?
To some degree, but we don't get that many really big sharks here in Bali and in Indo. Although I was in Sumba last week and I saw some sharks. So it's something that's
what
always
type? Like black tip reef sharks or bull sharks? Okay.
Bull, yeah. And then I saw a bunch of reef sharks, but there were a couple of bulls at this new spot we dove, and they were well fed, which is good. They weren't that interested enough. Solid.
Have you had many close encounters?
I've had a couple of close encounters with sharks over the years, but I think, you in Australia, there's a lot less sharks here. I think in Australia there's a lot more kind of mean ones. Your big white varieties and all of those whalers, tigers. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting.
I love spearfishing. I love being, like a hunter. I really enjoy it, and I love being able to put food on the table, and I love taking responsibility for it, and I love the fact that it's a very sustainable way to harvest food. I take responsibility for everything. You gear, you catch the fish, you dispatch and kill the fish, and I do it with a prayer or two, and then you bring the fish home and you carve it up, and then you prepare it, and then you eat it, and you share it with your family and friends. I love that. Like
connected to your food.
Totally.
Yeah. Do you feel vulnerable when you're out spearing by yourself though? Like, there must be a great sense of vulnerability.
You know what? I enjoy that solitary. I enjoy the solitary nature. I do. I do enjoy diving with friends, and I do that, but I also enjoy being out there and just getting quiet and being in the ocean underwater and just having that silence and peace. And then at the same time, because you're hunting, you're also ultra vigilant. So it's kind of an interesting one. But
interesting.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh man, I love it. I could just see like the look in your eyes as you were talking about it. It just seemed like I could see the pure, I guess the pure pleasure that it gives you. And yeah, man, it's deep. I'm not a hunter. I do feel very disconnected from my food, if I'm honest. Yeah. I do like to try and grow food, like vegetables and fruit and whatnot, but I think, there's something profound about having to go to that much effort and work for your food. I guarantee it sounds like it would taste so much better because the effort and the time that you put into it, and it's pretty impressive.
Look, I love it. I really do enjoy it. I was vegetarian for many years, and I had that kind of like question in myself about hunting. Particularly fishing, because that's what I do. I don't hunt anything else at this point. But if I could, I would. Like I'd happily go and harvest my own food out in wherever, in the bush or in the mountains, if I needed to, because where it comes from. It's either it's lived and roamed free. It's a big circle in life. And then I realized that my body needs other forms of protein. So I'm not one of those sticklers. I'm like, each their own. Some people can really live off fruit and veg and nuts and sprouts and the rest of it. I like to participate in the whole full circle of it. Capture my own food and eat it.
Yeah, man, I love that, man. So, listen, I just want to get stuck into a little bit of like your experience with Bali. I mean, your roots are very much planted in Bali nowadays. So when did you first visit the place and what drew you to it originally?
I mean, talking way back when, or just
way back when?
My family are from Hong Kong, so I was born and raised in Hong Kong. My early life, and my parents came here in '67 to Bali, and I first came here in '74 with them when I was just a little 1 year old. So that was the first time I came, and Hong Kong to Bali was pretty easy. We used to go to Thailand a fair bit too, but I don't remember it, but there's photos. And then again, I came with Vanessa like in 2000. Me and Nessie came, and we haven't really looked back, before the bomb. So
like you and your wife haven't looked back. Do you mind if I ask, like, did you guys meet in Australia or Hong Kong, or how did that go?
We met in Sydney. I was living in Hawaii. I moved to Hawaii when I was 17, out of school, and ended up spending all up about 8 years in Hawaii, and then did a bunch of traveling in the interim all over the place. Like I said, I was in Czech Republic, I was in Guatemala, South America, Spain. I rode a bicycle through like Albania and Greece and Israel. I did all kinds of stuff in that time.
What?
Yeah, that was a mad journey. But that's a whole story unto itself. So I was in Hawaii. I'd been living in the mainland in America for about 2 years, and I had a bunch of money saved. And my dad was like, "Listen, come back to Australia." I never really lived in Australia. I'm Australian, but I never really lived there up to that point. And the Olympics was happening in Sydney. It was 2000, and I landed in Sydney from Hawaii, and I was like, "Wow, that was just going off." I'm going down to Bondi Beach and watching the beach volleyball, and just like it's like a massive Brazilian fiesta.
No way.
Beach at Bondi. So then Vanessa was working for Quicksilver, and we connected. She was working in Sydney. Yep. She worked for this guy, Chris Athos, at Surfection. He's a pretty amazing.
So, Surfection in Manly?
Yeah, she worked in Manly. She worked in all over. Mossman.
I know Surfection.
Yeah. BY, Warriewood. So she did some time there. And, we met. I was ready to leave, man. I was like, after the Olympics were over, I was in Sydney. I was thinking I was going to go travel up the coast, jump in a van or go to Western Australia. But I was like, my friends in Hawaii were saying, "Bro, come back." This friend had a house on the North Shore, and he was living with a bunch of girls.
Hey.
From the program, a good mate of mine.
Okay.
So actually, at 17, when I first moved to Hawaii, the reason I moved to Hawaii is I ended up in rehab. I went to rehab.
Right.
Yeah, that's another long story.
At 17.
At 17, yeah, I just got kicked out of a series of schools consecutively, and I wasn't doing well. And my dad had lived there in the 60s, working as a restaurant kind of trainee in Hilton, and got really close to the family there. And one of them ended up being in the program. So I was, messing up, and I was given the option of going to rehab in Hawaii. And I'm like, no brainer. So
amazing.
Packed off to Hawaii. Anyway, a few years later, there I am, and moved to Australia from Hawaii. And then I'm about to leave Australia, go back to Hawaii. And then I met Vanessa. We've pretty much been together ever since the millennium.
And she shared that love for Bali with you?
Yeah. She'd been coming here for years. I think she came here in the 80s. And she had a lot of connections here. And she's kind of like, we pretty much just pulled up stumps and moved here. And then we started manufacturing jewelry. So Vanessa has a jewelry business. And then we were doing markets. We did markets all over the world. We were in the States, we were in Australia, and festivals. Amazing. And, fancy free and footloose and no kids. Easy.
Yeah.
And then we opened a shop down in Kuta or down in Legian because we came to the conclusion, why leave Bali? You can hang. Such a chill place, Keep leaving and then restocking the coffers and then coming back and doing it again. And it was just like, we opened the shop. And not soon after, Flynn was born.
Yeah.
So we've had a few 5-year.
Do you I guess it seems like there's a real entrepreneurial spirit between you two. And can we just go back to when can you tell me the point you got to in life where you're like, okay, I've got to make my own way in life now? Like, when did you have a moment as a young man where it's like, okay, I've got to, try and earn a living and, do all that stuff? When did you have that moment, or was that something that happened post rehab?
Yeah, I'd say it's post rehab. Getting clean and sober really changes the way I saw life. Having to, be self-sufficient and being self-supporting is a pretty key thing for your own self-esteem and also just to be, contributor to life.
Yeah.
So I suppose
Gotcha.
after rehab, I was back at school, and then, after going out again and then having a series of mad events and just kind of like, basically not really functioning in society and doing things, a little bit pirate-like off to the side. And then I suppose getting sober again when I was 22, and then basically starting my first business and having that realization. But I think, in a sense, for me, having my first child, having Flynn, was the real kind of like wake up. It was like, oh, I've got this person to look after and feed. I'm, in a relationship with this woman that I love most of the time. No, I love her all the time. But you know what I mean? I love Vanessa. I'll say that loud and clear. She's my wife. I love her. And,
Nice, brother.
Relationships can be tough. So anyway, there I am. And
They really are.
We've had Flynn, and I started growing up at that point. I think up to that point I've just been really fancy free and footloose. I've been pretty entrepreneurial. I can make money and have fun. But then I realized that I was actually had a family and I was a father, and I had a different set of responsibilities, and I had to give this little man my energy and time and love. So that shifted something in me. So I would say that was probably a real turning point for me, in the sense of being more independent.
Yeah, like just going on with the father thing, because I talked to a few of my friends with it about it, and I think a common theme that comes up is that we found when we had children, it was really challenging to, not be self-centered. It kept coming back to us. Like our life was all about us, all about us, all about us. And we get to this moment, well, it's like, you know what, this little baby doesn't care about what you want to do, And, a lot of them and myself often talk about how just in this constant battle of, being self-centered and then wanting to balance that with, doing what we want, and then also being, available and there for the children. I think a lot of men struggle with that.
Yeah. It's a real turning point for men and for women, of course, but we can't speak for them. We speak for us. It's like almost it is a rite of passage. It's like we shift from being this lone wolf or with one mate into, more of like a little bit more of a leader, setting an example. And I think each to their own, right? Some people are maybe just not ready. Some people aren't grounded.
Yeah.
You're not in a relationship with you break up and it's tough. Kids just add a whole nother dimension to any relationship.
But do you think it's a lot more innate in women? Like it comes more naturally to women to give up what they want and be less selfish when it comes to raising children?
I think that's a generalization, because I think a lot of women who also are not ready and they can't handle the responsibility. But to generalize, once again, I don't disagree with you. I agree with you. I think women almost don't have the choice, because this little person is suckling off them. This little person came out of them. They've got that real deep-seated bond early in the child's life. Whereas we as men, our role doesn't really come in till later when we become more a protector and a home builder. But I think it's in an ideal kind of scenario and relationship, it's a very symbiotic relationship. The woman becomes much more nurturing and is, like looking after the needs, and then we're looking after the women and the house. It's like a pretty prehistoric biblical scenario, ideally. But each to their own. Like some societies, there's lots of parents. One child, there's aunts and uncles, and everyone's looking after them and pitching in. I think in our day and age and stuff we lived in, the roles are changing, with women working a lot more and, having more high-powered jobs and just wanting more independence. Kind of the relationships have changed and the dynamics have changed. Yeah. But I think the fundamental DNA or the genetics of being a parent hasn't changed. I think as a man, for me, it was very much a case of everything changed and I became a different person, and life before kids was never going to be the same again.
Yeah. Oh man, I see it, dude. I can see it in you. Like it's
I was going to say life was over.
Life is over. I know, but a lot of people joke about that. Like, I mean, I remember before I got married, people would say to me, "What are you doing? Oh, your life's over now," and as a joke. But I'm like, not really. Like, life actually got better, and then it was like when you have kids that like people joke, "Oh yeah, life's over now," and it's like, well, is it? I think life's just beginning again. Like it's like another birth of my children and a rebirth of my soul. And,
totally, man. I agree. It's like a whole new dimension opens up, and there's like this door in your heart that you never knew you had. Just
thank you, dude. Thank you, because I personally was never someone that really desired children, or I thought I didn't.
Yep.
And actually, the catalyst for it, I was with my wife at the time. She really wanted a child, and I was just sort of like, oh, I'm not ready. And ironically, I was surfing macaronis in the mental eyes, and I took one in a little bit too far, and I went to pull through the back of it, and it sucked me backwards over the falls, and I landed on a bit of reef on my ass, like right on the gooch, man, like right, like, and I'm serious, like my balls just swelled up to the size. I can't believe I'm telling you this story, to the size of like a grapefruit. And then like things weren't working down there. I'm like, and I just had this moment of like, oh my God, imagine I couldn't have kids. Like I just was like, oh my God, like it could be taken away just like that, like the ability to create a child. And it was like, I really believe it was the universe's way of saying it's time to have a child. Like stop being so selfish. So anyway. There you go. I've probably divulged too much about myself now, Jake. It's a bit awkward.
I won't forget that picture. I have that picture stuck in my mind for what.
Just think of my gooch.
Mac is good. Nice. Thank you.
It's weird, man. Because I don't know. Anyway, so look, let's not go there. Now, listen, man. It's been epic. It's been almost an hour, and look, man, this is our second attempt at this. We've had really tricky challenges with the internet and with some tech issues. But man, thanks so much for, bearing with me through it. I love hearing you. You have a really good voice, Jake. It's like a really
thanks,
you speak well, mate. You speak well, mate.
Thank you.
So listen, man, like I ask all guests to come with a cause or something they want to advocate for. It could be a charity. It could be a social enterprise. It could just be a philosophy in life. So is there anything you want to advocate for today?
Oh, that's a really good question, isn't it? I mean, I love animals. I love humans too, and I've always considered myself a bit of a protector of the underdog, being not of the biggest, physical stature. I always and I tend to find a lot of animals, especially here in Bali and in a lot of third world countries, get a real hard knock. But then I also think about, I believe in reincarnation and karma, so everything happens for a reason. And I'm not God. And it's about being as compassionate and loving as possible. But with that said, I also support Sea Shepherd. I think Sea Shepherd are doing amazing things, protecting wildlife in the oceans. Dr. Paul Watson is a very controversial figure, but he gets a lot of shit done. He's a doer.
Amazing.
So I support him for that. And also, I definitely am a big proponent of peace.
Yes,
and,
brother.
Non-war in the sense of we need to resolve things and issues in more peaceful ways. And I feel that for me, meditation and the inner journey is a way by which I can contribute to a more peaceful planet. And so I think that meditation for me is a really important and key part of my life. And I would highly, highly suggest anyone who's interested to go and find a teacher in the local area or a person that that teaches, or an ashram, or YouTube is an amazing resource. I follow the Bhagwan Ramana Maharishi teaching, and he wrote a beautiful book called, well, he didn't even write it. It was actually transcribed by someone else. It's called I Am That.
Wow.
I think it's a beautiful book. Oh, sorry, not I Am That. I Am That's by Maharaj Nisargadatta, which is also a great book. But yeah, so Bhagwan Ramana Maharishi, beautiful, beautiful proponent of meditation and peace. So if I was to propose anything, it would be that. And I hope that kind of might resonate for some people. It certainly resonates for me.
Oh, dude, that's the best. There's some great ideas for people to tap into, Jake. So thanks for sharing that, man. Just going back onto the YouTube, just quickly, the YouTube thing as a resource, like, you know, there's an amazing amount of different meditations out there. I've just been doing one recently. It's just called I Am, and it's like a series of affirmations and just someone speaking at you, saying a variety of affirmations, and it's just amazing how, when you use affirmations, how much it can tap into your subconscious. And before you know, you just start manifesting them without actually consciously doing it. So if anyone out there is looking for, you know, needs some affirmation in their life, that's a good one.
I have one more too, if you don't mind. I'll just throw it out there.
Oh, yes, please.
It's Muji, and it's called The Invitation. Muji is a very cool spiritual teacher. I think he's English but Jamaican. So he kind of talks with a little lilt, you know, and a bit Jamaican. But he's got a beautiful little 25-minute meditation called The Invitation. And you can I use it on Spotify. It's also really sweet.
Dude, awesome.
And
Thanks, man.
Rupert Spiro, another YouTube channel that I love. He's an amazing, amazing, beautiful man.
So let me write that down. So Rupert who?
Rupert Spiro, Spiro.
Gotcha. So I will put a link to these things that Jake's talking about, like Sea Shepherd and some of the meditations that he's just been discussing. I'll put it in Jake's show notes, and you can find Jake's episode on terriblehappytalks.com. And there's also links to the various other platforms that you can find this podcast, such as Apple Podcasts, iTunes, Spotify, Buzzsprout, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, and TuneIn, and Google Podcasts as well. And you can find the platform that works best for your device. Now, Jake, listen, brother, I've got a present for you.
Oh.
And dude, I got a present for you, and it's on the way down, probably via GoCheck actually from Canggu.
Oh.
But the guys at Indosol will be sending you a pair of flip flops or slides. You know, they give every guest a pair of shoes that's on the show. So just a small token of our appreciation, Jake. Thanks for your time, man.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Very kind.
Hey, just one more thing I want to ask is, like, how are you feeling about, you know, Bali at the moment, like economically in these COVID times? Like, you know, you're a businessman in Indonesia. How are you feeling, man? Like, you feeling okay with that stuff, or?
Yeah, I think it's, you know, it's a big wake up call, man. It's taking a look at my business or our business and seeing where the strengths and weaknesses are. I think it's going to be tough here for the next 6 to 12 months. That being said, I think, you know, there's silver linings in everything. So I just have to stay positive and utilize all the stuff that we can do and what we can control and what we can't control, what's out of our hands. And just go with the flow.
Dude, just go with the flow. That's a nice way to end, bro. You're a legend, man. All right. Well, thanks for being on, and I'm going to stop it there and just stay on the line for a sec. All right, bro.